Beastie's 15, huh? So I'm not sure if you're aware, but I'm kind of the white lily guy around these parts. And as such, I have some qualms with the finale, let's say. To be honest, I've only been focusing on the lily aspect. I could have guessed that the guy with white lily cookie flavored neurodivergence stopped processing the narrative immediately following her deeply unsatisfactory conclusion that left me feeling so hollow I've lost almost all interest in this game, but you know, it's fine, it's whatever, it's cool. So I decided to take a page or two out of the books of a few artists I really like, and these are mine now. That moment when they fuck up your bitch's arc so bad you gotta invent a whole new set of situations to put them in. Cynicism aside, this was something I've wanted to do and have been working on for a while. Beasties 15 just expedited the process a little bit. In short, I've been on and off working on a creative project where I take a bunch of characters from games and shows and comics I like and toss them into an entirely new world tailored to my personal creative interests. And I've been very motivated to do that for my current two favorite characters, White Lily Cookie and Dark Enchantress Cookie. And maybe this is me trying to soft launch talking about my OCs, but we don't have to unpack that now. To break this down the way I wanted to, I had to figure out what it was about White Lily Cookie that gave me the fuzzies so I could translate those aspects into a different story. There's a lot of nuance and projection to it, but the gist of it is that White Lily Cookie is someone who is deeply fascinated and in love with the world around her, yet her self-loathing causes her to feel out of place in it to the point of insane levels of guilt. Her primary goal is to create a better world for Cookie kind and finally give herself value, but in that effort, she only continues to distance herself from people who care about her and make situations quote-unquote worse for everyone, eventually accumulating in her becoming every aspect of herself she hates the most and hurting the people she cares about. On the opposite end of the spectrum, almost everything I like about Dark Enchantress is stuff I've either had to make the fuck up or gleaned from White Lily Cookie. DevSys seemed generally disinterested in defining Dark Enchantress as a character, both on her own and in her connection to Lily. One interpretation of Dark Enchantress I really liked was that she represents Lily's true freedom, her curiosity and brilliance, no longer burdened by Lily's usual impulse control and insecurities. I've explored similar ideas in my comics and animatics, seeing as White Lily Cookie was much more abrasive and direct as a child, similar to how Dark Enchantress is now, which led me to believe that all the aspects that Dark Enchantress presents are things Lily buried deep within her following her first massive catastrophic fuck-up, bubbling underneath the surface until the perceived futility of her kind's existence was realized. TLDR, a desire to do something good for the world masking a desire for self-worth, warped by horrible circumstances beyond your power, preying on your insecurities. It's a very reductive way to explain my thoughts, but it's the simplest way I can think to put it, and our goal here is more to establish a blueprint with similar bones to build off of in the future and addressing my issues with how these characters were handled. That being that the writers were either unwilling or unable to properly have Lily confront her character flaws in a way that actually meant something. Hope for Freedom tried to do this, but even at the time it didn't feel like she truly soaked up any growth or understanding, which would have been interesting if they were trying to explore the idea that White Lily Cookie consistently comes to the wrong conclusions from her findings because of her unaddressed biases against herself. This was not in fact their intent. Before we get to the design process, I feel I need to give you just a little bit of context on the framework we're working with here. Realms in which this story takes place in are called the subconscious worlds, inhabited by various kinds of fae known as dreamers. The lives of these dreamers are considered and perceived as stories, boundless and full of potential and being retold almost constantly. However, many fae have curses, labels, and confines placed onto that limitlessness. Most curses come with a familiar, which is a physical, semi-independent manifestation of a curse. No one knows how or when this began, but it's been around long enough that it's seen as just another normal part of the dreamscape. There's much, much more to it, but for the sake of clarity, and bait for potential future videos, we're going to leave it there for now. I started out with some simple concept scribbles trying to manifest the hap form shaped of what I already had in my head into something vaguely coherent. I'm someone who struggles a lot with being satisfied with my design choices, so I've had to reconcile with the fact that whatever I make is almost guaranteed to be redesigned again at some point, and I'm just going to have to live with that. What's more important is that I get something on the page now for me to further explore and innovate on later. When designing characters for this project, I prioritize certain design motifs that I really like to exaggerate. Association is also really important to me. Dianthy's motifs are pearls, butterflies, the moon, and mushrooms. The moon looks like a pearl, and pearls can look like certain kinds of mushrooms or some kinds of insect eggs. Keeping those motifs in mind when shaping her is very important. With her wrap specifically, I wanted it to have a vague shape of a chrysalis or a bagworm, which is funny because those already have very vague amorphous shapes of their own. I like the idea of pants that look like a dress more than a dress itself. It'll be easier to see in the finals, but I wanted the hems of these huge flared pants to drag on the ground behind her. I also didn't want to overcomplicate the look too much. Initially, I wanted the wrap to be iridescent, but Sunny liked the darker version, and I realized it was also better for obscuring any of the mold that wasn't already covered by the rest of her clothes. Just adding a slight butterfly pattern to the wrap was enough to keep it from looking too dull. Diantha isn't someone trying to draw too much attention to herself, so her outfit should be as plain as a dream fairy can get. Her priority is covering up the worst of the damage done to her body without restricting her movements too much with these fabrics that kind of hang off her body in weird ways. And her umbrella, not actually designed with the function of an umbrella in mind. It actually functions as a cane, but she can use it to fly around, and the petals of it spin like a pinwheel when she does. That was a very fun bit of whimsy to add to her. Her hair is left largely unchanged from her original design. I just made it fluffier and rounded out the edges with these curls that kind of had the shape of a sundew plant and gave it the same iridescent rainbow sheen I've been giving everything else. Her original design also had her familiar just kind of sitting on top of the mold sprouting from her eye, which I thought was boring, so I changed it to a kind of bulbous fungus blooming out of the side of her head that was a similar shape and patterning to the familiar. These little blooms were originally just flowers in her first design, but I'm choosing to think of them now as spores or pollen, and that's just the shape they take. Dream logic, you know how it goes. Her body was the most detailed, which is funny because the intent was always to cover it up. She's got these huge splotches of iridescent mold and spiraling branches of fungus and nectar. I did my best to make her torso look like a hardened shell that was broken open and make what would normally be large tufts of fur on her hips and shoulders, similar in shape to oyster mushrooms, you know, the ones that grow on trees. Her title is the Kaleidoscope Garden, referencing how a group of butterflies is called a kaleidoscope. So I wanted to cover what would be her usually muted pastel color palette with these rainbows that look like they're steadily oversaturating her. Papillon, Dianthy's familiar, is actually a hive mind, and the big one that posts up on her face is the brain. They were initially going to be pale, but I thought giving them the rainbow palette I've been using felt more appropriate. I was also using both butterflies and bees to inspire their behavior. They spread spores instead of pollen, they respond to spikes in their host emotional state, they feed off the plant matter in her body, they can kind of communicate. Familiars aren't necessarily part of a dreamer's consciousness. They don't want the same things, and cooperation between the two tends to be circumstantial. For Medea, her primary motifs were fly traps, thistles, veins, chains, and thorns. All those have very similar silhouettes or share some kind of aspect that are easy enough for me to homogenize. Unfortunately for everyone, I personally adore how unsubtle and over the top evil Dark Enchantress's design is, and in a dream world, it only makes sense for me to keep Medea, the manifestation of all Dianthe perceives as evil about herself, just as edgy and fun to look at. If Dianthe's outfit was something that looks like it became worn and disheveled over time, Medea's dress is already ragged while trying to convey an aura of elegance and intimidation. Her dress was really simple to design in retrospect, but in the moment it didn't really feel like enough. I felt like I was just throwing things at the wall with chains, and I struggled a bit to incorporate the spiderweb motif in a way I found satisfying. The thing I think I really like about it, though, was the illusions. The boa hangs just where her scars cut off, so the red detached from the dark violet of the rest of her body makes like she's wearing like opera gloves. And with her hat just being the brim so it didn't get in the way of her horns, the closed loop of said horns create the silhouette of a full headpiece. That kind of gives you a peek into my design philosophy, trying to trick your brain into seeing this thing as something else. She has very few rounded edges, her horns are fused together, and her body is full of chips and holes. Like, even with this new, stronger form, it's still not able to fully handle the sheer force of all that energy, almost as if it's being rejected or experiencing a violent allergic reaction. Anyone who knows how I feel about the Magnus archives or Everybody's Gone to the Rapture will immediately understand my intent with this design. I also wanted everything on her to look like it gave off a faint eerie glow, like simultaneously sickly and angry. I knew from the beginning I wanted Medea's face to constantly be obscured in shadow, but I also wanted her to have dark hair, which isn't necessarily an issue, but I did want it to stand out somewhat. So I decided to have her more closely mirror Dianthe by giving her dark hair and iridescent sheen as well, kind of like the shimmer of a beetle carapace. I love making the patterns on her face bloodshot and have the iris take up almost the entire eye. She's so creepy. She can see out of all of these eyes, by the way. Got rid of the ears though, filled up an awkward amount of space that obscured her hair and horns from certain angles, and I didn't want to use too many outlines. She was also meant to be referencing Baphomet a little more heavily, but I think I got too caught up in the visual motifs of everything else. Oh well. And now, with the design exploration done, we can finally put the pieces together and get to a story. Dianthe was someone who, for reasons she could not understand or explain, saw the world she was born into as strange in every sense of the word. How the dreamscape behaves enraptured her. All the odd, sometimes scary things that scurry around in the dark, and every star and planet in the sky, they were all equally beautiful to her, and she didn't know why no one else was asking the same questions she was. When she was very young, by sheer happenstance, Diantha witnessed a blinding, unfathomable light, and it burned her down to her bones. But it was so breathtaking that she knew she just had to know everything about it and would proceed to spend an absurd amount of time chasing it wherever she could. She's reclusive by nature, impulsive and blunt. She theoretically likes people if it's only from a safe distance, but she's very curious and cares a lot, and she's desperate for answers as to why she is the way she is in this world specifically. Diantha manifested with a kind of cognito infection that often affects how her body moves, and the dream world affects her symptoms differently, no matter where she goes. It also tends to affect others in strange and unexplainable ways that scare her because as aloof as she is, Diantha hates taking up space. She's almost always on the move. She switched schools several times as a child, always hyper aware of her own presence in the room and how others respond to it. The thing of it is, Diantha is not cursed, and she can't reconcile with that at all. There has to be something else wrong to explain why she is this way, why she was born in a body that doesn't fit and moves in ways she doesn't want, and why people avoid her, why every aspect of her life seems to be designed against her. It's not even that she wants the company. She's just as easily put off by people as she is charmed by them, and doesn't like the expectations that tend to come along with being close to others. All she knows is that people think something is wrong with her. For some reason, she doesn't fit into this world. The only thing keeping her from completely falling apart right now is her magic, something she knows she's objectively skilled with. To her, this has the potential to negate the net negative of her presence and leads her to venture out into all the unexplored and scary little corners of the world that no one else would dare to. She keeps throwing herself into her research, taking up work as an unofficial professor at one of the schools she studied at to continue to have easy access to research materials and funds, without necessarily having to engage with other people outside of publishing the occasional article on her findings. She's rarely heard from or seen by others directly, either locked in her office or off on another expedition without telling anyone where she's going or how long she'll be gone. Eventually, she lands on a conclusion that no one else even seems to be aware of. The subconscious worlds are sick, and the slow decay is causing anomalies everywhere. And somehow, it's connected to that light and the curses. It's at this point that Diantha's story takes a very steep turn. She finally catches up to that light, and what she finds raises more questions, and it all hurts. Proximity to this radiance undoes her at her very core, and she understands now that there was never anything good that could have come from this light. When Medea wakes up, she can still feel that light burning under her skin and trying to pull her into itself, even in this new strange body. She can tell her body is stronger now, but it works against her in new, more violent ways. And even worse is that she can tell her magic is gone. The one thing that she knew made her worth something. She is furious. In an instant, everything she'd worked for and defined herself by is rendered pointless. She has no idea what to do with herself now that everything she'd understood about the world has been turned on its head. And the next months are hell as she fights with things crawling inside her and becoming more and more resentful. The sickness is spreading, and somehow she's making it worse. Not intentionally at first, but she can feel it propagating through her body. There is something inside her that isn't this light. She doesn't want to be a part of this thing, and that rage causes it to mutate inside her. She's decided to make this thing, whatever it is, her own, and become a new strain of the infection and turn it on itself. She was never able to do anything of worth or benefit before, but now she can become something that can undo all of this. All she has to do is hone this new body and this plague. She's angry and tired and maybe going a little bit crazy after being exposed to the unforgiving light of God and having her body warped horrifically. And maybe that combination of things doesn't really put you in the mindset of proper self reflection. She's in this doom spiral of her sane, unhealthy habits and practices with a slightly more distorted view of the world and her place in it. She wants to see just how far she can take this infection, who she can add to her hive, what shapes the sickness will take in others when filtered through her. She wants this world to be free of this light, and the only way to make an antivirus is to understand every facet of the disease itself. And right now, she can't be bothered to care who she has to step on to reach that goal. She understands now that this world was the problem. It was never her, and she is more herself now than she ever was. What she wants is a world that makes sense and doesn't hurt to be in anymore. However, she does have this vague awareness of something else wandering around the dreamscape. Yeah, so Diantha is kind of alive. It's probably more accurate to say that her story has diverged. What remains of her original story and body is now cursed for whatever reason, and that curse is keeping her together as painful as it is on the inside. She's releasing spores and hearing 100 little voices and has this hazy knowledge that there is another her out there somewhere doing something absolutely awful, and whatever handful of people she cared for probably think she's dead now. She's scared and alone, and once again can't remove the knowledge that this is her fault from her head. Both sides of the story are now two different flavors of right back where they started. And that is where I will leave things for now. I'm really hoping this made sense. This was a really fun for me to work on, if not a little bit scary. I struggled a lot with what information to freely give and what I want to hold close to my chest for now. It was a very difficult balancing act, but I want to hope you all can pick up on what I'm trying to do here. My media literacy isn't all that good. I'm constantly terrified of saying something that could be misinterpreted, and I'm awful at directly explaining my story ideas in a way that fully captures what I want to do. I wish I had more people to bounce these ideas off of. I got so dizzy from how anxious I got about making this. Hopefully, if I feel comfortable doing this again, I'll have refined my edges a bit more. I think what I want is to explore the aspect of characters I like in a more tangible way, if you get me. It's fun to see how much character can be warped and reshaped by your brain and pick up on things the original writers probably didn't initially intend. I love playing with toys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I've never written a script before, but I want to give myself the freedom to do what I want creatively without fear my audience may lose interest in me. With this video, I don't want the takeaway to be I'm smarter than DevSys and could have written a better story, or this is how things should be. As much bitterness as I have for the ending of this arc, I'm not trying to put myself above people who get paid to write professionally and have a lot more education and experience than I do. Maybe I could do better, maybe I could make things worse. There were some things I kinda liked about this conclusion. I'm not a total hater, nor am I the prevailing authority on narrative. I just wanted an excuse to talk about what these characters mean to me more directly, and I'd really like to see others play with character interpretation like this. I've seen it a few times in the Cookie Run fandom, mostly Shadow Milk, but I've seen a few of Burning Spice and Pure Vanilla that also caught my eye. If you guys make any Lily or Dark Enchantress XPs, I would love to see them. I hope you enjoyed yourselves and come back for another visit soon.